Hello and welcome to Access Chat. We're delighted to welcome back Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren, repeated guest on Access Chat. It's been a couple of years, so as a reminder, Judge Ginger was the founder of the first mental health court in the United States, a real pioneer in restorative justice. So we're delighted to have you back. Obviously, you've been operating in unprecedented times, so I think it's a great time to catch up and find out what you've been doing and what's changed in the world of
I'm just so happy to be here. And I feel like, for the last year and a half, not only have we become so isolated, all of us, from our regular routines and the people that we see and everything that we do, that we've been so used to, but for you all, just to be here, to be able to come back and talk about the experience. Not only I think is it going to be extremely therapeutic for me, but I think it's going to be, really enlightening for your audience on so many different levels, because so much has changed. The genie is out of the bottle in technology in the courts, and it's exciting.
Excellent. And yes, so tell us, you're now, we were just discussing before we came on air that you're holding sort of hybrid hearings, and that must have huge implications for how you deliver justice, how you do these hearings, but also really positive impacts, but also some challenges for accessibility too.
It does, and I want to just back up a little bit and maybe put it in perspective, because you do have a global audience.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I'm talking in global terms. So, and as you might know, I know you were following me at the time, but about 6 months ago, 7 months ago, whenever it was, I don't know, I can't remember the exact date, but I was moderating a global panel for the 2021 Hill Foundation Innovating Justice Awards that was held this past year, and I had the honor of moderating a global panel, and on the panel was the Justice Minister from the United Arab Emirates, and representative of the head actually of the Singapore Law Academy, as well as the technological director out of Sierra Leone. And we had a really exciting panel about the intersectionality of technology, the law, all under the umbrella theme, if you will, of how do we really promote access to justice, correct? And I thought that what was so really ironic, in a sense, is here I am moderating this panel, and I'm coming, of course, from court innovation and problem-solving courts, and how do you promote human rights in terms of, and disability rights through the court process, etc. But here we are. These panelists have been working in justice systems that are so highly technological, for so long. It's really part of their paradigm. And I'm just going to raise my volume up a little bit. And, here in the United States, not so much. So the pandemic really, for the United States, has been quite a catalyst in terms of the use of technology, how it gets implemented, and now where do we go from here, which are all somewhat, unanswered questions, and, from my vantage, from my perch, but really interesting and exciting times, because I'm not sure we were all prepared for the pandemic and the lockdown.
So great to have you back, Ginger. It's great to be able to have this conversation again, because we somehow we keep ourselves engaged on Twitter over time. We know you are always there. That's
Thank you, Antonio. I really appreciate that.
So looking at considering what you just said, do you feel that all the situation that we have been over the last couple of months was somehow unblocked some of the changes that people didn't want to do before COVID? Get my point? No, there were some changes that were needed. People were delaying them or didn't want. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I think that particularly for individuals, you know, let's just take individuals that accessibility and getting to a, you know, driving to a courthouse and you know, navigating you know, a very large challenging courthouse like the one we have, for example, in Broward County, and you know, and the financial aspects of paying for parking and all the things that we don't necessarily think about are very, very big issues for so many people that we see in the justice system, whether, you know, it's on the civil side or on the juvenile side or the criminal justice side. You know, these are could be very real hardships for people just to show up to court. So yes, I think that I'm not sure. I think there was a latent, you know, need to really get us jump started in technology, and we are. I have to say, we are really on the move.
It's exciting in a way. It's too bad that it took, you know, a pandemic to get us here, but I know you were already showing leadership before in your courtroom, so it is very interesting, and I hope that we continue to learn from these lessons and that we don't go backwards. But I also want to take you. I don't know how forward I'm taking you, but one thing I think is, which I always love about the work you're doing, is that as I was reading about what might happen with artificial intelligence and robo judges, and can we make robo judges, you know, less biased than maybe human judges and things like that. I'm just curious, with all that we've learned about digital inclusion, and you know, you said you're really sort of back to like a blended right now, in the court, not in the court, things like that. But do any of these lessons tie into what we're going to do with our justice systems in the future with artificial intelligence? I know I'm going sort of out there, but I know that you're really on top of things too.
Well, you know, you're not going out there. I remember years ago, and maybe Neil, you know, you have a better memory of this, but there was actual testing from IBM of, you know, their robotics, and they were using their robotics, you know, and through artificial intelligence in terms of in the justice system, and they were getting some really good outcomes. I think it was Watkins, if I'm not mistaken, was the name of that IBM.
Watson, right?
Was it Watson, something to that effect? Somebody could look it up while I'm talking.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, it's pretty threatening. I mean, when you really think about it, you know, because let's be honest. I mean, you know, we're human. We all bring our lived experience with us. We bring our belief systems with us. We bring our cultural implications with us. We're only human. And, you know, I think that there's going to be a place. I hope, you know, it doesn't totally put us out, but I know that, for example, just to give you a kind of, I know I'm going off the track, but I think it's a cute example. And that is that I think you all know, you know, I'm also an adjunct professor in the College of Psychology, as well as criminal justice and graduate studies, teaching what I do, essentially. And yeah, problem solving, innovation, how to lead cultural change for justice, etc. And there was a real plan in the College of Psychology to develop a simulation, a simulated lab for the mental health court. And that, and all I kept saying is, well, if I'm going to be an avatar judge, you know, make me blonde, you know, you know. And that was really exciting. And, you know, you think about, wow, you know, what could we learn from that? How could we improve justice? And then does the aspect of competition, right? Us, you know, against robots, you know, in the future. I could just see, you know, this great film and, you know, coming to pass. So yes, I mean, I think that artificial intelligence, you know, is you know, going off like a moonshot, you know, across so many chasms. So I don't doubt it for 1 second.
But at the same time, I really do believe that, you know, maybe with the right data sets, we can teach robo judges not to be biased. And, you know, I'm hoping we could, but
well, justice is supposed to be blind, right?
Good point. But I always think that we need to have judges that see over the robo judges and look at their cases.
Of course.
Make sure that we have quality assurance and stuff going on. I think we will always need the Judge Wrens of the world. I totally think that. Yeah.
But to your point, we have to realize that in order to feed AI, we need data.
Right.
And the data that we might be using today was generated over the last 20 years.
Right.
And that's very difficult because it's very difficult you need to make sure that you are not going to bring the bias from those decisions.
Yes.
Well said.
And replicate them in the future. So it's a very difficult challenge.
Yeah, it's very complicated. And I like to think if you're going to humanize law, you need humans.
Right. Good point. I know that Neil wanted to comment on this too.
One of the cases that concerned me that I'd read about was the use of AI to predict recidivism rates. And essentially what was happening was that they were using historical data, and because of the historical biases amongst the communities of color and the people of different ethnicities and different socioeconomic classes, were more likely to be picked up by the police for minor offenses and infractions, and therefore the prediction that they were going to reoffend in the system was likely to trigger, and they were much less likely to get released. So as we design these systems, and I think there is a need to speed up justice sometimes because people are left waiting for human decisions. So there may be utility in doing some of this stuff. We've still got to design our intent better, rather than just relying on the data that we've had from the human-based systems of history, where we know that you know the societies have these biases, that the socio-economic classes that were most excluded are also the most likely to get picked up by the criminal justice system. You know, if you're wealthy, you can afford a good lawyer. You're going to look a certain way. You're not going to be perceived as a threat. You're much less likely to get questioned by the police in the first place. You're in a neighborhood where the police aren't looking. All of these things, you know, impact on your statistical likelihood to be picked up. None of them actually impact on whether or not you're more or less likely to be inclined to do something that infringes the law.
No, it's such a complicated question, I think, fundamentally, because, you know, I guess when you were saying that, Neil, all that came to my mind was okay, you know, if we want to get to outcomes, right, that are more just, that are more equitable, that, you know, really demonstrate the fairness of what our goals of our system are, understanding that we always have to balance public safety, then you want to go to the data sets as to what works, correct? Not where it's failed, not a fail first kind of data set, but with all of the deficits that drive and contribute to that, but what works. And then of course we know that we have to, that what we need is beyond, those aspirational types of facts and data, is we need to make sure we can scale up. And in order to scale up in terms of resources and making sure that systems, that we could prevent trauma, that we could, really reduce disparities, that we could attack systemic racism and structural racism and all of that, and become a more equitable, empathic, society as a whole, then we need to do things holistically. And, we just can't compartmentalize, because we could mine really great data on what works. And that I hope you recognize, because I try very hard, that when, for example, on social media, I'm always coming from that point of reference.
Yes.
Meaning I really don't like to come, that's where I feel my own inspiration, like I have to inspire myself.
and we're all of a similar mindset in that respect, because we're all on social media trying to inspire people with the positive intent and possibilities of technology and society to be better and to serve people better. So which is why we've remained connected over the years, and why we're delighted to have you back. So it was never meant as a criticism. It was more meant as a...
Oh, no, not at all. I didn't take it as such. I was thinking, okay, well,
indeed.
How do you match the artificial intelligence with the scalability?
And I think that some of that is, you can't always rely on that historical data, and you have to design new models based upon where you want to be, experiment with them, measure that, see whether or not the outcomes are correct, and then build upon that so that we can scale up this, as you say, empathetic system of justice that really delivers what we all believe in.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Judge Wren, I know that in the all over the world, but just probably because I'm in the States, I'm hearing social justice. It's said so much all over the world, and it sometimes means different things to different people. And I mean that respectfully as well, but and my team is starting to be brought in more into social justice conversations, which we're so glad of. But I was just wondering if we could just sort of shift to that conversation, because I personally think you should be leading a lot of these social justice conversations because of the work you do and the leadership and innovation that you are showing around the world. Well, it is a compliment, but it's also truth. So thank you.
When I started writing many years ago, and I guess that events did focus around when I was up for that International Social Justice Award out of The Hague so many years ago. So I love that term of art, and the way I visualize and activate social justice is in a very, very broad construct. And that is that, the idea of going back to very basic principles of human rights, of justice, and, that the aspect of fairness, the aspect of human dignity, the aspect of equality, that we are all equal under the law, that we all have, the same, we all ought to theoretically have the same opportunity for housing, that we ought to have the same opportunity to get health care, that, and I mean quality health care, that we all should be able to have food to eat and be safe from violence. And so when you look at the Convention for Persons with Disabilities, for example, just using that as just a really, basic foundation of human rights on a global level, you can see the intersectionality that even if you're not a lawyer, even if you're not a judge, you have a role to play in the promotion of social justice. And what I tell people in my courtroom is that, and I say this to people that are incarcerated, because I want them to know, we talk about, reentry, we talk about the research base, we talk about therapeutic approaches to well-being. We want to create new pathways for opportunity. All of this falls to me, it's social justice talk. If we, and I remember years ago, well, I was giving a lecture at a community college not too far away, and I do it every year, and it's their, I think it was for Broward Community College, their psychology club. And it was right at the time when the film Selma came out, to commemorate, of course, the incredible Bloody Sunday attack across the Eugene Pettus Bridge. And I said to every student, go see Selma. I go see Selma, because just watching that film is an act of social justice. And it's the little things, it's the big things. But whether you're a physician or a journalist or an economist or, any work you do, an educator, of course, a lawyer, of course, we all have a social worker, of course. We all play a very significant role in the promotion of social justice. Oh, you're muted, Deb.
How long does it take me to get off mute? Yeah, no, well, beautifully said too, beautifully said. I know that Antonio also had a comment or a question. So let me turn it over to him.
So we know that our community is very interested on this topic. So I would like you to, if you can, to tell us, how were you, considering all the constraints, that we live in, how you were able to somehow navigate in those constraints to make sure that you were able to, make sure that that your decisions, your court was inclusive as possible, to somehow unbalance those injustices. Because it's a new situation for everyone. You might have people on the other side of the phone who are in low bandwidth. Others might not even have a phone. Can you tell us a little bit, some of those backstage stories that could somehow help us to understand what you have been passing through?
It is challenging. It is challenging because just yesterday I had an older individual, disabled, and not familiar with Zoom, doesn't have a smartphone or didn't know how to use it. Even though when I saw this person, I'm not going to say anything more about that person to identify that person, but we had a long conversation that this is how we're going to do the next hearing, and tried to give instructions from the courtroom. And then sure enough, that person didn't show up. on the Zoom hearing, and you start to go, uh-oh, did that person get out of jail okay? Is that person okay? You know, I don't want to have to issue a warrant for that, ultimately, where is this person? So thankfully, luckily, for the people that I see, not in both of my courts, but in the mental health court, I take phone numbers. I have phone numbers, addresses, things like that. I keep like you go into a doctor and you fill out a questionnaire. I keep a notebook so I can contact family members. And luckily, her lawyer was, the lawyer was able to call, and we were able to call and just said, hey, I understand you're not able to get on Zoom, but if I take my telephone and put it up to the monitor and put it on speaker, we could, kind of make it work that way. So you improvise through a call-in on a Zoom. So that was able to work. And I invite people, and what about mothers, for example, who, have childcare issues and they're not able, and when we have hybrid hearings, if they are subpoenaed, let's say, to be in court, they could have asked to be on Zoom, but they didn't know to do that. And so and people that don't have the bandwidth and people that don't, it's really problematic. And so that's where we've got to make sure that, there's some mechanism through some aspect of county government or the court system to, really, I think, get some data on this issue, number one, and understand where the gaps may be, and then work to fill those gaps. I just don't know what we don't know.
To complete my question, that requires an extra effort from everyone, particularly from you, from your team, from the lawyers. Do you see that the value and that effort being recognized at locally, at government? Are people recognized? Because that's a huge effort. The number of hours that are required to work and to have the work done are completely different.
I wish all of my colleagues could hear you right now. That's what I wish. I wish every judge and every lawyer could hear what you just said, because you care about the process and you care about the effort that goes in to try to make these processes work. And no, nobody's talking about that. Nobody is acknowledging, wow, this is a really tough climb that you all are doing under very difficult conditions. And I really don't think that gets discussed. Maybe it does in some circuits, in some places, but maybe more than others. I haven't really heard that. I think that this is more of, look, you are responsible for due process, for the promotion of due process under the law. And we recognize that under the pandemic, there's hardship, for, really to get equal access, now to technology, et cetera. But there's really no real conversation, not only about the challenges, but again, who is getting left behind.
And those efforts are, are extremely important. And I think that people don't necessarily recognize the large amount of effort it takes to be intentionally accessible and inclusive, and the impact that has on the individuals that are trying to do it, and the resources that really are required to do it well and at scale. So
exactly, yeah. Exactly, Neil. I was almost thinking, well, maybe I need to go to that person's house. I mean, maybe I need to go to that person's house, take a court report. I don't, I remember I once years ago, not, no pandemic, but there was a juvenile in a locked residential facility. I needed an emergency hearing. I said to my court staff, we're going down there. We're holding an emergency hearing down at that locked residential, facility, that program where this disabled child is. It was that much of an urgent matter. Of course, that program got shut down, thankfully. But how do you bring justice to where the people are? How do you serve them where they are if they can't get to you, even through a technological process? And I think, we have to get into the community and really do a mass survey.
So I think this is interesting, and there's been some experiments in the UK that I'm aware of where hearings are being held in places like shopping centres. And so they're making them more accessible in a, both mainly, firstly, because Mammon wants everybody's money. Shopping centres are generally more accessible.
That's really interesting. It's a win. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And we do have a model, a problem-solving court model that are community courts, and there's, they're not, they're not really necessarily geared. They could be, I suppose, geared to meet this issue, and really activated to do that. But they're, they're just not that prevalent to be able, I think, to do that on a grand scale. But I love that idea that you could designate a community center to hold court from and let the public know, come there.
Yeah, and also it's less intimidating, I think, as an environment. Courts, I know you're making great efforts to make it less so, but court buildings generally have been designed to be intimidating because they want to reinforce the power of the law and the seriousness of justice.
It is. It's done, I mean, if you can see my courtroom, the colors are warm, the elements, it almost looks like you're in a living, I met the architect. I actually met the architect of our courthouse in San Francisco at one of my book signings. And it was a very interesting meet. And it's very pretty, but yes, they are designed to really elevate that the authority and the dignity and the authority of the power of the court. Yeah.
So I think that these things are interesting. So the physical design and the aesthetic design has an impact on the mental state of the people that are involved in the process and in the building, and that's not something that a lot of people think about. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. I'm also really interested in the idea of Judge Wren on tour with a camper van bringing restorative justice, or I think that was.
I have a vision.
Oh,
I
think we have a TV series.
I see it coming. Yeah, Justice on wheels.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that whole sort of piece of sort of because a lot of these things are fairly minor, and people fall into the trap of getting into scrapes, and these things escalate with the recidivism and everything else. So that the kind of justice that you're trying to bring, where you're offering alternatives to locking people up and new pathways, requires people to come to you, or has, to bring that into the communities, would serve more people. The other area that I'm interested in, and you touched upon, was trauma. And I think that communities of people that have experienced trauma are also much more likely to be falling foul of the criminal justice system, because that they start to behave in, when they're traumatized, they start to behave in ways at their first point of contact with law enforcement that make the law enforcement more suspicious of them. So how can we remove some of that, or some of the trauma, but also deal with people that we know have been traumatized and are in traumatized communities?
I think it's the essence of social justice, that how we become more interdisciplinary as judges and as lawyers, and also in law enforcement. I mean, but just talking about the law as a profession, and I had this beautiful conversation yesterday with students over at my local law school at Nova, where I graduated from yesterday, and to remind law students that this is a helping profession. The law is a helping profession. Just like, any healthcare profession, social work, we are a part of a helping profession. So we have to therefore understand that, for example, what I teach and what I do in both of my criminal divisions, whether it's the mental health court or my court of general jurisdiction, is we're problem solvers. We're problem solvers, creatively, strategically, collaboratively, and we're also educators. So if I have to be able, so it's fundamental to me for individuals that have experienced significant trauma to help them understand what has happened to them, in terms that they recognize there's hope, that they can recover, that the court could help them do that, and that the court wants to help them do that. And if they feel that that's something that they are willing, to try on, so to speak, and listen to what the research and data, Antonio, tells us about trauma, about the impact of adverse childhood experiences, and the impact of poverty, the impact of social determinants of health, which includes discrimination, racism, just growing up without quality access to healthcare, nutrition, and communities that have strong pillars of culture, right? And that are environmentally safe. So it crosses over all of these social determinants of health, which is public health. But I think the idea of creating a space in court process where we could teach and we could form these bonds, these invisible bonds, relational bonds with the people that we serve to trust us. That is really the mechanics, if you will, of therapeutic jurisprudence. Can we tip the scales toward humanism? Can we tip the scales of justice toward dignity? Then we have a chance. Then we have a chance to level the playing field with the people that we serve, and maybe they'll be more open to saying, "Yeah, I get it." For the first time, oh my God, I was the victim of domestic violence. I was a victim, of sexual assault. I did grow up in a home where there was addiction and poverty and violence or abuse. All of these factors, as you say, Neil, drive behaviors that contribute to becoming justice involved.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about this forever ever. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time. We'll invite you back again, shall we? Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. Need to thank our friends Barclays Access, Microlink PC, and MyClearText for keeping us on air and captioned. We really look forward to you joining us on Twitter. We know it's going to be a great conversation. Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Access Chat, for everything you do, promoting social justice every day.
Oh, thank you. We love you.
I love you all too. Take care and be well.
Great.